Code monkey get up, get coffee. Code monkey go to job. Code monkey have boring meeting with boring manager Rob. Rob say code monkey very diligent, but his output stink. His code not functional or elegant. What do code monkey think? Code monkey think maybe manager wanna write login page himself. Code monkey not say it out loud. Code monkey not crazy, just proud. Code monkey like Fritos. Code monkey like Tab and Mountain Dew. Code monkey very simple man. Big warm fuzzy secret heart. Code monkey like you. Code monkey like you.
What's new, Dino Dudes? It's me, the Media Raptor, and welcome back to another episode of the Media Raptor Reviews. It should be pretty obvious what we're talking about tonight if you didn't look at the title. Tonight, we're just going to dive right into it. I'm going to talk about the 2019 video game detective movie, Detective Pikachu. Now, for those of you who haven't seen the Pokemon R&R trilogy I did on the original trilogy of Pokemon films, let me give you some brief context for this. I loved Pokemon growing up, but I stopped kind of paying attention to it at around the time of Diamond and Pearl. Those were the last ones I bought new, and after that, I just didn't really care. I bought Omega Ruby because I got a 3DS and I was looking for something to kill time with while I was on a road trip, and it was fun, but it didn't re-spark a passion for Pokemon like for some people it did. I don't hate Pokemon, not by a long shot. It just wasn't, my thing. It certainly was growing up, but that's just it, growing up. I outgrew it and moved on. So when I heard they were making a movie based on the Detective Pikachu game, I was pretty disinterested. To be honest, I never played the Detective Pikachu game. It just didn't seem good, so I skipped it. And it seemed like it was about to go down the path of the, typical video game movie curse. That it's a great concept, great game, but terrible movie. Then I heard Ryan Reynolds was going to play Pikachu. That got my interest because, well, it's Ryan Reynolds, what more do you need? And then I saw the trailer, and it looked pretty good. Then I saw the movie, and it was really good. Now, let's be honest here, this is a kid's movie, so it's not the deepest or the most well thought out or the most intricate mystery plot you'll ever see. In fact, the writing is kind of predictable. The mystery is fairly predictable and fairly safe for kids, but at the same time you need to know, yeah, it's made for kids. However, there are a few twists that I didn't see coming that genuinely did surprise me, that were well foreshadowed and didn't just kind of seem to come out of left field so they could try and trick even the adults. The mystery itself, I don't want to spoil it because I do want you guys to go watch this movie, is a solid mystery. It would be a good one for kids to try and think about, wait, why would this happen? And the more they reveal, the more kids would be able to kind of pick up on it. Essentially, it's like a Scooby-Doo episode in a way, except with Pikachu instead of a talking dog. In fact, that's a great way to look at this movie. It's essentially a Pokemon version of a Scooby-Doo episode. A very good Scooby-Doo episode. They get the mystery right, they get the beats right, they get the twists right, and overall, above all, it's very entertaining. The characters in this movie, we have, Tim, our main character, really likable. I was kind of surprised that it seemed like they were going down the path of the whole, well, I don't want to spoil it because that kind of gives away part of the film. It really does seem like they were doing a lot of typical tropes with, the kid, the kid with a troubled family and stuff like that, and not knowing his dad and stuff like that, but I was surprised how much of it they actually subverted or invoked in a different way I wasn't expecting. Granted, he never comes across as unlikable. In fact, the only thing that really was confusing was his reason for not liking Pokemon. They started to explain it, but never really fully did, so it just kind of came across as he doesn't like Pokemon. And then he does. Again, kids movie, and you're not there for the plot as much, you're there for the actual story, and that was a very, very minor plot point. And it does get well resolved. You actually do see him slowly change and grow to like being around with Pikachu. Speaking of Pikachu, They did this so well. It would have been really easy to have Ryan Reynolds play Pikachu and just constantly spout pop culture references or fourth wall breaks like he does with Deadpool. That wouldn't have worked for Detective Pikachu because that's not what this franchise is. Instead, they gave Pikachu a really good personality, they made him smart, likable, and a very good foil to Tim, and they also made him relatable and even surprisingly emotional. I'm not gonna lie, there were a couple points in this movie when I actually felt like I was tearing up. Yeah, Detective Pikachu is actually a surprisingly emotional movie, and it doesn't screw up the beats. It actually makes you feel things with these characters. All the characters in this movie are really good. Well, of course there's a villain. The villain actually has a pretty justifiable reason for what they're doing. Granted, they're completely insane when you find out why they're doing it, but at the same time, it is a good villain. It's not your typical, I want to take over the world, ha ha ha, kind of thing. It actually is a villain that would make people stop and think. It's a good villain for kids as it does show multiple different factors to why people will do things the way they do. Why it can drive someone to do bad things. It's actually surprisingly deeper than I thought it would be. Now, one thing that the writing does kind of struggle with is the comedy. This is not a straight-up comedy to begin with, but they did try and have a lot of jokes in it. So, most of the jokes were chuckling funny. None of them, there were a few that made me laugh out loud, but it wasn't as funny as I think they were trying to. But at the same time, I don't think they were trying to make it a comedy, so I'm willing to let that slide. Now let's talk about the Pokemon aspect. Does this work as a Pokemon movie? Yeah, this is the best Pokemon movie that's ever been made. I love what they did with it. Kind of a spoiler here, but it's pretty obvious even if you watch the trailer. The city where this whole movie takes place, Pokemon training has been outlawed. Essentially, Pokeballs are no longer used, there aren't Pokemon battles, and Pokemon have jobs. The idea is that Pokemon and human will go stronger together through a connection of friendship. And I think that's a really cool idea. The fact that Pokemon have jobs, seeing how these different types of Pokemon live in a city, like you see Pidgeots and Ho-Ohs flying around, you see Apoms just climbing around on buildings. It's really clever. It's like Squirtles work in the firefighting department. That I thought was hilarious. Like, that was a really nice touch. It's just a really cool idea, and they totally capitalize on it. And surprisingly, this movie isn't constantly going like, hey, you know that Pokemon, look, it's this Pokemon, look, it's this Pokemon. It's, hey, look, there's that Pokemon. Hey, there's that Pokemon. There's that Pokemon. The fact that there's Pokemon in this movie does not distract the viewer from the actual story, which surprised me because this is a kid's movie and you'd think they'd be trying to go like, hey, look, Pokemon, you know what these are, right? It isn't that kind of movie. It's actually a movie that had a good amount of care and effort put into it, and really does pay off. Sure, the writing is predictable. There's no getting around it. The mystery, not the deepest. It's certainly no Murder on the Orient Express, or even A Death on the Nile. It is fairly predictable, and once you've seen this movie, you wouldn't rewatch it for the mystery, you'd rewatch it for more of the adventure. And the adventure is very, very good. In fact, there was one reference, I think. This is kind of a spoiler, but again, if you've seen the trailer, you know that Mewtwo's in this movie. They mention Mewtwo escaped 20 years ago. I think that actually might be a reference to the Pokemon the first movie. I don't know exactly when it came out, I'll have to check that. But that could have been, at least if it wasn't, I think it at least ended up being an accident, but at least a very fun reference to the first theatrical Pokemon film. That could not be it at all, and I could be just making stuff up, but I like to think that it is, because it seems like that would be the kind of reference they'd go for. So, the jokes are okay. Some of them land great. I'm surprised how well the writing is overall. Like, it's a solid story, it's entertaining, gets the job done. But what also helps this movie is the acting. Justice Smith has been showing up in more and more stuff, and, well, he's just getting better and better. He wasn't the... was he in Jurassic World? Like, that's the thing. I'm pretty sure he was in Jurassic World, but he wasn't the best. You know what, I'm just gonna stop fidgeting with this. I caught a chair. But in this, he gets all the emotional beats right, he gets the humor right, he gets everything right. He's just a solid, good actor. Ryan Reynolds, do I need to really say much other than he's Ryan Reynolds? He runs with this Pikachu role and brings a shocking amount of humanity, emotion, and depth to a role that is a Pikachu wearing a detective hat. And every other actor is just really good. Ken Watanabe, I was surprised to see him in here, and I can't wait to hopefully see him in Godzilla King of the Monsters. There was really not a bad actor in this entire movie. But you know what the best part of this movie is? The special effects. I am so impressed with what they did. It would have been really easy. It probably was really hard to take these usually 2D sprites and now 3D models and make them realistic in a 3D setting. I mean, the Sonic movie showed us how not to do it. This movie showed us how to do it. All the Pokemon look both adorable, realistic, and really cool. Pokemon like Charizard have like realistic scales and sort of like a reptilian skin on them. Bulbasaur seems very much like a living plant. The scenes with Torterra, it looks amazing. And for the record, Torterra is one of my favorite Pokemon ever. They look so cool in this movie. And the CG does blend very well with the live action. There are a few shots when you can kind of tell, oh, that's CG, but a good chunk of it looks relatively realistic. Like you could believe, okay, there is something there. The only one that really kind of stands out as doesn't look right is actually Mewtwo. And I think part of this has to do with the idea that, you know, he's not real, like he's a mutant essentially. He was genetically created. I think he's not supposed to have that whole like perfect look that the rest of the Pokemon do. Or maybe he was supposed to and they just didn't do it right, but there are a few shots with him where the CG is quite noticeable. Anyhow, other than that, everything else is really good. The score, especially towards the end, is great. I love the uses of the Pokemon theme in this movie. There's one scene where they actually have the original Pokemon theme. It's one of the laugh-out-loud moments. I'm not going to spoil it. Camera work, there's surprisingly a lot more than just a static, straight shot. They use a lot of different angles and camera movements to try and emphasize emotion or a sense of uneasiness in certain scenes. It is surprisingly a more creative. It uses the camera in creative ways more than you would expect for a Detective Pikachu movie. And as someone who is studying film, I do appreciate that. The different uses of camera angles, lightings, and even different types of camera lenses for certain shots that I can tell, it gives the film its own sense of style, its own sense of, uniqueness. So can I recommend Detective Pikachu? Totally. I saw it in theaters. Will I see it again in theaters? Probably not. If you got kids, though, they will love this. If you love Pokemon, you will love this. If you're not a fan of Pokemon, you'll still probably get some enjoyment out of it. I'm giving Detective Pikachu a solid 3 Raptor Claws out of 4 on the entertainment factor, and 3 Raptor Claws out of 4 on the quality factor. It is a solid movie that was much better than I expected. Excuse me. It's not the best movie I've seen this year, and I doubt it will be. But you know what? It is entertaining. It certainly is memorable enough that when it comes out on Blu-ray, I will want to pick it up. It was able to entertain me. It went by pretty fast. It's not like a movie that drags on and makes you look at your watch. I think part of that had to do with it's made for kids, so they wanted to keep it moving so kids wouldn't get bored. But overall, it's a very solid movie. It's fun, it's entertaining, and that's the best way to put it. It's just a fun, entertaining thrill ride that brings heart, charm, laughter, and a real, just good sense of fun. Again, I know I said that like a bunch of times now. To it. It's far better than it had any right to be. So with that being said, Dino Dudes, that's all we got time for on this episode of the Meteor Raptor Reviews. If you enjoyed it, please leave a like and subscribe for more reviews coming soon. Talk to me down in the comments. We can talk about whatever you want to. Follow me on Instagram for whatever I'm doing whenever I post stuff on Instagram. And until next time, this has been the Meteor Raptor saying keep cool, and I will see all you Dino Dudes around. Later. Pika Pika. I'm sorry.